Hello there guys and welcome to Mad Doc Minis. As you've probably gathered from that intro, I am going to be building Thunder Warriors in this video, or at least my interpretation of Thunder Warriors. Now I start with these custodian legs because I really want the extra height they bring to the table. Thunder Warriors are supposed to be kind of huge hulking beasts, much bigger than Astartes and stronger too. So I kind of wanted the extra size that these legs will bring. So do stay tuned though, because things do take a sharp turn towards the end of the video, just to keep you interested there. So once I've built those legs up, I decide to chop off the dome on top, and that goes right through the kind of belt buckle piece at the front there. So we're losing quite a lot of material off the top. And I do that very simply with no finesse, using hobby snips and a sharp blade just to trim it down flat at the end. And as I said, we're losing quite a lot of material off the top. We're going down really below belt level, and we're kind of unveiling a little hollow. You can see that little hollow in the center of the miniature there as we go down. And you're kind of ending up really just above kind of buttock level with that kind of trimming. And I will show you a comparison so you can actually see that, guys. So here we go. You can get an idea how much we've taken off there. And if I turn it round, you can see we've definitely gone kind of below the belt, at least at the kind of rear portion of the miniature there. All right. So for the torso, I'm using these ganger pieces from Necromunda. These are Goliath gangers. They're big, they're muscly, they're kind of quite barbaric looking, and I thought they kind of fitted the idea of the Thunder Warriors really. And they got the kind of scale to carry through as well. They're a bit different. I didn't just want to use a Space Marine torso. I wanted to do something a little bit different with these. So I go ahead and chop off the legs and the kind of groin area and go up underneath the kind of abdominal plate on these Goliath minis. So a little bit of careful trimming. So I kind of want to keep some of that detail there, although I do shave some of the surface details off of that armored plate at the front because it's not really quite appropriate for what I want. Once that's all been trimmed down and tidied up, I kind of like scrape all the details off. Again, you could do a much neater job than me here, guys. I'm not the best detail worker. I then use these bases from the Necromunda minis because they're, I think, a little bit thicker than regular bases, and it'll just help to add a bit of extra height, really. And, you know, they're nicely detailed, so why not use them? I've got them. So I decided to go down that road. Here we can see the chest armor piece on the Goliath Mini. This particular one has a little gorget sticking up, which I want to get rid of. There's only one, I think, or I think is a repeating sprue you get in the Goliath. So there'll be two of these, sorry, in the pack that will have those little gorget things. I didn't want mine, so I just trimmed it off and then glued that onto the chest as normal. And that's really the torso, all right? And that whole thing is going to go on top of the legs, the custodian legs that we've just trimmed down. So you kind of need to get the dimensions right here so it doesn't look too funky. You know, in the past I've done quite stretched minis, haven't I, with Space Marines? They end up looking a little bit gaunt, a little bit weird. I'm trying to avoid that with these if I can, and that's looking pretty good at this stage. I use the Goliath arms. Now I've gone for the arms wielding the kind of like big, like they look like kind of like revolving type shotguns. I don't know what they actually are, but those are the arms I've gone for because I want to convert those weapons. And this is the weapon I'm talking about here. Do let me know in the comments what they are. But I decide to trim a little bit on the kind of outside of the weapon to make way for a kind of drum type magazine. I want these to be like kind of proto bolters, really primitive kind of versions of bolters. So I decided to kind of trim a little, almost like a little valley in the side of the weapon there. And then I use these drum magazines. Now, I believe these are from Heavy Intercessors, but correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I can't remember where I got these from. I've got lots and lots of bits hanging around. And I just kind of trimmed those down a little bit so they fit in that valley that I've just trimmed out of the side of the weapon. And it ends up looking okay. You know, in truth, I would have liked kind of even bigger kind of weaponry, but I just couldn't kind of find the right fit, basically. So I went with these for the time being, and it all turned out okay in the end. I used the muzzle off of these Heavy Intercessor heavy bolt rifles here because they're a little bit wider, a bit thicker, and they just look a little bit better. So I put those on the end of those weird kind of Necromunda shotgun thingies, and it just makes it look more like a bolter, an automatic weapon. And there we go. That's kind of the basis for that. I do end up putting bayonets on these things as well from the Mark 6 kit, but I don't film that. Now, here I'm using the head from the old style Cadians with the goggles on. You can get these from their old heavy weapons kit, and I think from other areas as well. I don't know if they come with the Sentinel kit. I think that might be a slightly different head actually, but this one's from the heavy weapons kit, and it's very similar to some of the classic images of the Thunder Warriors because they have these kind of like goggles and a very similar style helmet. I just trimmed that funny box off the back of the helmet there because I don't really want that, and I actually trimmed the kind of the eagle symbol off of the front of the helmet as well, because again it's just not really appropriate for what I actually want. So that goes as well. So that just gets smoothed down. You know, I don't do a fantastic job on that, guys, but it's fine. It gets rid of it, and that's good enough. Now, moving on, I'm using these parts from, these are from the Sisters of Silence kit. Now, you've got lots of spare heads in this kit, so I'm not really sacrificing my kit as such by using these. I just cut off some of the plumes off of these heads here to use on top of those Cadian helmets that I've just used, and that really is trying to pay homage to some of the original imagery of the Thunder Warriors, and I'm really happy with how this turned out, actually. And once again, I actually used a little bit of plastic cement to glue those to the top. So there we go. Trying to hide it out of frame there. I'm so ashamed of myself. But there we go. So that's really coming together. Next up, thinking about shoulder pauldrons. And I used normal Space Marine shoulder pauldrons. And I used like a kind of like Heresy era one, the studded one on one side, just because it looks a little bit more barbaric, I guess. And that's kind of it. That's kind of like where I was at this stage. And I just actually, for the leader of the squad that I'm doing, I use this Necromunda kind of like big, it's like a big hammer thing, a big, I don't know what it is really, but I trim that down and turn it into an enormous mace using this spare bit that I had lying around. And there we go. That's how he turned out. Trouble is, I wasn't happy. They just looked too sleek for Thunder Warriors. They look good in their own right, but they weren't really matching my vision. So I broke off the torsos like so, just kind of snapped them off, and I could do that because I used super glue for the torsos. And I got these guys, which are some old cataphracti terminators that I tried to kind of increase the height of, and they just end up looking like sumo terminators with a great big kind of belt around them, and it was a really goofy attempt. So I sacrificed those to the conversion gods because I'd never used them for anything else, chopped them up and used the legs from these guys, and that was definitely the right thing to do for me. They just look so much better, and yeah, it just definitely needed to happen in my view. So I super glue that torso that I built on top of those legs, and I'm already so much happier. We've got a rough join in the middle, which I later cover with lots of stowage like pouches and grenades and spare bits and pieces, and that hides that terrible seam that we've got running around the kind of waist section there. I broke off the studded shoulder pad off that right side there that I put on before, and put a normal one on because I need a smoother surface for the next bit. So I use the kind of the large cataphracti pauldrons, or the large section from those pauldrons, and put that over the top of those Space Marine shoulder pads to give them a more Baroque kind of look. And I think it's kind of appropriate that, you know, they've got that kind of cataphracti look to them, because I mean, cataphracti terminators are pretty ancient, aren't they? So maybe there's some sort of connection. I don't know. It just looks better. Now you'll notice I haven't done a backpack on these guys, and that's very deliberate. The Goliath torso has these horrible things that go into the back, into the flesh of the back, and I kind of like it. It looks like these guys are kind of somewhat tortured and in pain all the time, and I kind of want to paint them up that way. So I've deliberately gone without a backpack, without a power pack, so I thought these guys would move around without power assistance. They're like super strong, but that's a very easy fix. If you wanted a backpack, bang, just put it on the back, job done. I'm going to put a basic tabletop standard paint job down on these off screen, guys, and then I'm going to display them on a rotating platform in the final footage for you to have a good old look at. It's a good moment for me to mention that if you have enjoyed the content, please consider liking and sharing. It really does help my little channel to grow and develop. And if you are not already subscribed, please consider giving us a sub. It really does help, and I do appreciate all the support. So without any further delays, let's have a good old close look at these things and how they turned out. Here they are, guys, with a basic paint job on. Yes, they look like Custodes because of the color scheme, but in the lore, they are kind of this color a lot of the time, and I wanted to stick to convention with these, really. And I've gone for quite a uniform appearance in my squad with the same weaponry throughout, apart from the leader. You may want to do something a bit more dynamic, a bit more close combat orientated, but as it is, I like a nice uniform squad. That's just my jam. Now, if we take a look at one on his own, you can see the use of Horus Heresy transfers there, and round the back where that ganger kind of body is and all the kind of tendrils going into the back, I've made that look quite sore and raw because I want this to look like a, you know, kind of like tortured creation, really. That's how I imagine Thunder Warriors, if I'm honest. So moving on, I'm going to do a bit of a size comparison with a Primaris Space Marine, unmodified, and you'll note that the Thunder Warrior is a good head taller, and that's great. I didn't really plan that. I wanted them to be bigger, but I didn't check very much, and I'm really happy that's how it turned out. If anything, I'd like him to look a bit bulkier in comparison to a Primaris, which he doesn't really in this footage here. But, you know, it's a learning curve. It's my first attempt at making Thunder Warriors, and I may have another go in the future to address that issue. Moving on, I've chosen something bigger for a comparison now, a Leviathan Terminator, albeit with a head swap. That doesn't affect the height of the miniature, and you still get an idea of a good comparison here. And as you can see, the Thunder Warrior is still, in terms of head height, a wee bit taller, and that is marvellous, so I'm really happy. And one more comparison here for you with a regular human. This is a Cadian with a head swap to make a Praetorian. And you can see he looks like a small child in comparison, which is exactly right. That's very appropriate for a human being to look that small against a Thunder Warrior. So guys, let me know what you think. Have you tried making Thunder Warriors yourselves? I've heard people using Stormcast bodies and Custodian bodies, a bit like me with the legs in the beginning. What are your thoughts? Let me know, and I will catch you in another video soon. Take care.